For heaven's sakes, we're on the radio. Hey, isn't that exciting? I mean, being on the radio and all that. I mean, it really is. I mean, before we get started tonight, I would like to warn several of you out there that tonight's program may be one of excruciating well, I just thought I'd warn you, but I forgot what it's going to... Oh, by the way, we have a note here. It says the bird. It's a bird 6 inches in size that lays a 9-inch egg. That's terrible. That's Keith's bad joke. By the way, speaking of bad jokes, this is me, and I'm going to be here for a while, and listen. Are you listening really carefully now? I want you to listen very carefully because I have something here of genuine reality. I don't know how better to say it. It's genuine reality. I think it must have been about a month ago that I mentioned that we get quite a few letters from guys that are in the slam. I mean, guys that are that have been put up on the beach there. And hung on a big rack. And, guys sitting around in a can. Well, I got a letter here, and here it is. It's on prison stationery. Now, a lot of people have never seen prison stationery. And it's very official. I've seen all kinds of the prison stationery from many different prisons, and it all looks pretty much the same. It's white paper, and it has black lines on it. The lines are printed very dark, so that when you write on this stationary, you stay right above the line. I don't know what the reason for this is, but this is the way it all looks. It's got these black lines printed on it, and it doesn't look like the kind of line stationery that you got when you were a kid, when you had a tablet. Not at all. Because for one thing, the lines don't go all the way to the edge of the paper. Apparently, you can't run your writing all the way out to the edge for some specific reason, and the lines are sort of in the middle of the page, and they have about 1/4 of an inch of space between the edge of the page and the end of the line. And then above it, there's always all this official stuff above the actual letter. And it says the name of the prison. See, it's printed very, very big on the top of it. It'll say, Joliet State Prison, which is, of course, in Illinois. This is not the one that I'm reading at this time. To protect the guilty, I am I am not going to give you what slam this guy's in. But he writes like all the rest. Now, here's the thing that fascinates me about prison correspondence. Almost every prison correspondent that I have gotten letters from, one, they're very funny. Their letters almost invariably have a real sense of humor. Now, don't misunderstand me. Don't extrapolate my remarks here and make it seem like I'm saying that everybody in jail has a sense of humor. I'm saying that the guys who have written me do. See, there's a certain kind of guy. In every given society, there is a guy who is aware, if you take 10, 15, 20 people out of a group of people, there's always one or two guys who have enough of a breadth of vision. In other words, they have enough understanding of human nature, both themselves and the people around them, that they can see the humor of being caught and being thrown in the slam for trying to, and they, by the way, concede that they're guilty. They at no point do I get these letters, "Oh, Shepard, please get me out. I'm innocent. Oh, wow." Not that kind of stuff. Because it's already assumed that they're guilty. And it's not at all the kind of thing that that you always associate with you remember the Mickey Rooney prison pictures when Pat O'Brien was the warden, and Mickey Rooney was always saying, "You're gonna let me out, I'm innocent, yeah." That business. No, it's very different. And he writes this letter to me, and at the top, there is this, the letterhead is very big. It starts out, it says, let's say, Joliet State Prison. That's the heading of it. And then underneath it is all the information that you have to have. You see it all there? It's all kinds of little tiny type, and it says stuff like, visits for inmates whose last names begin with A, B, or C will be on Monday. Visits for inmates whose last names begin with D, E, F, G, or H will be on Tuesday. Visitors for inmates whose last names begin with I, J, K, L, or M will be on Wednesday, etc. Down to, then it says at the bottom, it says unsentenced inmates allowed 2 visitors. Each visitor allowed 1 visit per week. Sentenced inmates, these are guys that are guilty, allowed 4 visitors. Each visitor allowed 1 visit every 2 weeks. Not more than 2 visitors allowed on the same thing. For your information, inmates can purchase cigarettes, candy, toilet articles, etc. from the commissary. Send money orders made out to the inmate. Do not send packages. I can understand why. But anyway, here's what he says. Now, all set now to hear what his opening lines are in this letter? I'm sure he won't mind me commenting on what he says. He says, Dear Mr. Shepard, now this is from the Slam. It's on Slam Stationery. He's even got his number and everything. You have to put your number down, you see, on the top of the stationery. And his number is a very official number. It says, Dear Mr. Shepard, would you please send me your free booklet entitled The 7 Deadly Sins and How to Get More Out of Them? I believe, and I try to know myself, both my assets and liabilities, realizing that I have a talent for greed and fully agreeing with Holy Writ that talents should be put to use rather than buried, I desire counsel so as to more fully realize my God-given talent for greed. Hence my interest in your booklet. Realizing that I do not have to send 25 cents in coin to Washington for the booklet, I wish to commend both yourself and your station for your sense of commitment to public service, above all commercial considerations. I am in the Slam on a bank robbery charge, and I feel that had I had to a higher degree the education that you offer in your booklet, in greed in particular, and its applications, I would not be in my present circumscribed circumstances. I remain. Now there's a guy with a sense of humor, and he says, then at the bottom he puts a postscript. He says, on a more serious note, I'd like to say that I've been here now 6 months, and he says, as things can be pretty difficult at times, he said, I have one thing I look forward to every day. Your show in the evening is something that I just wait all day for. He says, why? Because you are just an honest man speaking his mind. Now, that's fascinating. No, that's the first time that I've ever had, of all the letters that I get from people. What's that? How does he hear it? Well, I suppose they allow him some kind of radio in jail. I don't know. Apparently they do. In fact, from the various letters that I've gotten from the prisoners that I've heard from in the past, they do have, it's a kind of a prison system. In other words, the prison pipes shows or radio into their cells for a certain number of hours a day. At least that was one guy wrote me a letter and explained this to me, where they had a switch and they could switch to 2 or 3 different stations, and by coincidence ours was one of them. And he says that all the prisoners are so hungry. He says they don't want music. He says they're so hungry to hear a voice from somebody talking on the outside that this is far more important than anything the Stones can ever say, you know. And these guys are listening, man. And but he isn't it interesting though that a guy who is definitely in jail says this line. He's the only person of all the of thousands of letters I've received over the years from people about one thing or another. He's the only one that has actually said that specific thing. He says, I dig your show. He says, I look because it is just an honest man speaking his own mind. Now that's very interesting, coming from a guy who's in jail. Now, he very, very, he says also, you want to hear more of what he says? He says also, admittedly, you have quite a style, but far more important is the fact that you have something substantial to say, often satirically presented. Still, you are very serious in almost everything you do. He says, particularly in your satire. That's quite true. You know, most people think that satire shows that you're not serious. And as a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. Any great satirist is even more serious than the guy who writes the resounding editorial. We here in the editorial office feel blah, 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 blah. And he makes that point. He says that the fact that when you're being satirical about a thing, you're actually being more serious about it than the kvetchers. You hear a lot of those on Barry's show, by the way. Barry Farber. Oh, yeah, the guys will say, you mean to tell me, Barry, that you can read on page 422 in my book, The Eagle Screams Over Brooklyn, that I wrote in conjunction with my marvelous wife, Rhoda. In our book, we show how the city of New York, and they go on and on and on, and it's assumed by people that they're serious. That is a very, very shaky assumption. They could only be pompous. Don't confuse pomposity with seriousness. That the pompous are around us. And incidentally, being pompous is quite a career. I think we ought to honor pomposity with an actual designation as a specific human art form. In other words, we use the term comedy. We use the term tragedy. People will say Charlie is a tragedian. Fred is a comedian. Fred is a satirist. Voltaire is a satirist, and so forth. Why not say Fred Applerot is a Pomposian or a Pompositarian, and he's appearing tonight on the Barry Farber show. Yes, and pomposity is really an interesting thing because it's probably one of the most consistent qualities that we have. That's the one thing that I hold against the New York Times, which I enjoy immensely. I love to read the Times. But they are pomposity. Oh, they are so pompous. They really are pompous. And my old friend Gay Talese, who wrote the book, by the way, about the Times, a long time ago, when he was working for the Times, he used to come over and sit around here at the studio. We used to talk about that tremendous pomposity. And you can see it in little ways. For example, have you noticed the radio listings in the Times? Oh, they're very pompous. Hello, test. I seem to have a hum here tonight. I want to change this. Hello. There. That's better. Okay. Yeah. Am I boring you about this? No, it's very interesting. I'm going to go on with this. That pomposity, I think, is one of the great human talents. And, of course, no other animal has any talent, actually. We're the only creature that has any specific talent. Yeah, talent is a human thing. Well, no, an animal eating you is only doing what he does. No, that's not talent. Talent is something that has nothing whatsoever to do with maintenance of life. In other words, a guy is not going to survive one way or the other by drawing a picture on the cave. It's abstract. Talent is an abstraction. If you take a high jumper, he's jumping purely for jumping's sake. He's not jumping high to try to save his life or jumping to reach the grapes like the fox did. He's just jumping. So that's a talent. And it's part of the abstract thing that man is. It's rarely seen where one impala will say to another impala, "Hey, Fred, let's see if I can jump over that rock, man. And I'll bet you can't make it." Although they may do it, we don't know. But the thing is that man has made a whole structure out of the abstraction of jumping and running and throwing and painting and writing music and all this stuff, which has to do with talent. But I think he's also done that with pomposity. Although, I think it's a genuine talent. I'm not putting it down. Oh, yes! A truly pompous creation, I mean truly, carried all the way out, can be highly entertaining. And also extremely educational. Because pomposity, I believe it. I think pomposity and it can be, because you see, pomposity is often confused among people's minds for seriousness. The more pompous you are, the more serious you are. You hear these poor, sad interview shows. Like the other day, I heard an interview show where this nice lady was interviewing an artist who had written a booklet entitled "The Future of Mankind," and how in the following 15 pages I show that man can produce far greater creatures on the face of the earth than he is now today. And, of course, our guest today, Charles W. Abercrombie III, that famous artist who has written this magnificent book called "How Man Can Create a Better World," will be with us for the next 20 minutes. I'd like to say that beforehand that I want to thank all of you for being on the program. And as I was saying to Dog Hammarskjöld one day,
many years ago, just after they had considered me for the Nobel Prize, and just before Bertrand Russell remarked to me, and on the occasion, of course, of Norman Mailer's ascension to the throne, that I said, that's so beautiful. Don't I sound like one of those people? And that she said, well, now, do you consider the space program a worthwhile effort on the part of mankind to extend his horizons and make his world a better world? I'm glad you, yes, I'm glad you asked that question. As I was saying the other day to President Nixon, I was saying to Mr. Nixon that in our considered view, would you please give me a little mood music for that, please? And I say, of course, I'm glad, in consideration for all the other things which mankind has attempted to do. And in my book, I outline very clearly that the course that man, in particular Western man, has been pursuing, the Museum of Modern Art, the Metropolitan Thomas Hoving and Hock at Curricula Conca, Arthur Heckscher and I. Playing that thing. Action. If you've ever taken a look at the radio section of the New York Times, now they'll have a radio section that say what's happening on radio. Then they'll have all the music programs listed. See, underneath it says talk, sports, and that's about it. Talk, sports, special events. Remember, talk, sports, special events. And they have all these shows listed. Now, the only shows they list are shows on which somebody is being interviewed. In other words, if one of those people, that's a fascinating thing, if one of those people being interviewed were to get his own show, it would then not be listed. That's fascinating. So I'm not even listed in the Times. I don't exist as far as the Times radio section is concerned. And what's that? I can't hear you, but it's all right. No, it's not even listed, see? But now, I suppose that shows, of course, that the Times will only recognize radio as long as they're interviewing somebody from outside of radio. In short, radio itself is below notice. Oh, I've seen this. Now, that's in spite of the fact, of course, that as a writer, let's forget radio. As a writer, I've had 4 or 5 national humor and satire awards, a few other. Oh yeah, I'm being perfectly immodest to you. Oh sure, no, it's true. Of course I'm being pompous. Now the point is this. No. You notice the only time anybody makes any ground in this world is when he does get pompous. Now I'm trying to tell the what I suppose you can say is the
lesson. Not only a lesson, I suppose you can say that the moral of the little tale I'm telling you tonight, friends, be pompous. Be pompous, man. I'll tell you the most pompous slogan in our time is all the news that's fit to print. That is a pompous slogan. And you notice how far it's carried them. Oh, man, further than anybody. Now, pomposity, of course, is important. Now, on the other hand, carrying that idea a little bit further, now, when you are pompous, now here, I'll show you an example of what I consider pompous people. You want to know who I think is pompous? Well, I think John Kenneth Galbraith is one of the most pompous men I've ever run into. Now, I've read some of Galbraith. Galbraith really does believe that the world revolves around him. That there are bits going out from him, and they revolve around him. Well, that's fine. I mean, that's great. Now, you notice that the pompous tend to drift together because they're all convinced, of course, that pomposity must be protected from the outside world. Now, oh yes, you're constantly getting shots and little arrows. Now, I can name, you want to know some other pompous people? Well, I think, no, pomposity can be both right and left. It's not really a matter of political. For example, let's face it, William Buckley is pompous. But he's pompous with style. He is. He's funny. And his pomposity, he finds, obviously, now I don't know Buckley, nor do I agree with him politically, but obviously Buckley finds his own pomposity funny. And that's why he'll never be taken seriously. Genuinely seriously. There's a big difference between being popular and being taken seriously. And so a guy like Galbraith, who really doesn't think of himself as pompous, oh no, he never would, is the ultimate in that, because he doesn't think it. If you think you're pompous, you're not. If you think you're pompous, you are not. It's like insanity. If you believe that you're insane, the chances are, friends, you ain't. I mean, it's as simple as that, and yet complex, that the pompous can only be pointed out by others, you see. In other words, you're never going to hear anybody say, well, I'm pompous, of course. If he does say that, he wants you to say, oh, no, certainly not, Aberthwaite. You're certainly not pompous. You're of course, it's true that at times you get a little ponderous, but not pompous. Of course not. Well, of course, I'm glad you say that, but, the pompous are people who really believe, and incidentally, part of pomposity, I think, being pompous, is to have a complete disdain for the others. Pomposity is an offshoot of a feeling of superiority. That to feel superior to other people is one of the reasons, one of the prime requisites to be pompous. If you really do feel superior. Now, I can name others. I mean, there's a lot of others around that have this kind of pomposity. You're rarely going to get a playwright to attack another playwright. Now, he'll attack somebody in television or radio, but never another playwright. And so it goes on and on. In other words, what I'm saying is that the attacking elements of our society have today gotten to the point where they will protect themselves. And that could be it could wind up with some very interesting problems in the future. Have you noticed that the only people that are right in our society are always cartoonists or playwrights? Or people who write folk songs? Fascinating. Then the obvious thing then is to elect a folk singer, a cartoonist, and a playwright to run the government. Then you're going to have something interesting. And, of course, we'll get Laurence Olivier to represent us in the United Nations because he's such an experienced king, you know. He's played at least 10 kings in his time.